Hi, and welcome to another episode of Next Level Coaching with Erin Kottman. I am super excited. We are going to dive into coaching through layers today. I have one of the first people I ever coached as a guest today, and I'm super excited about it. Before he introduces himself, make sure you like, share, and comment. Make sure that you are subscribed as well to our YouTube channel. You can also catch the audio of this podcast on all streaming platforms. So get connected with us. All right, Mr.
Hi.
Charles King.
Hey, everybody.
Okay, before we dive into like what you're doing now in coaching, give us how did you get here? You got a good story.
Yeah. I'm so happy to be here. One,
Yay.
I'm excited. So I'm Charles. I am 10 years into education.
Little baby.
And you were with me on day one when it all started.
Day one.
And so I graduated from my university and came back to Atlanta in 2015, joined KIPP WAYS Academy, and since then...
Which he was an alum.
Alum of KIPP WAYS, founding class. So I went back to the middle school that raised me in education, I feel like, to teach and be, a teacher like I had experienced years before. So I stayed at WAYS as a 6th grade and 7th grade, begrudgingly, ELA teacher, and served as a grade level chair there, which kind of provided my first experience with coaching and leadership early on, I think, in my career, looking back. So did that for 2 years, left WAYS to move to Charlotte to become an assistant principal, dean of students at a private school.
Completely different.
Completely different. And had a great experience there, and really enjoyed it, but learned that while I was continuing to do the work of education, I was missing doing it for Black and brown kids. And so I moved back to Atlanta after 4 years of that leadership and assumed the role that I'm in now.
Yeah, and so what do you get to do now?
Coach. Yeah, so I am the residency manager for KIPP Atlanta Schools. And in my role, I really am the manager of new teacher development for our region. And so we recruit new teachers and then we train them up over the course of 2 years. Specifically, my role involves coaching the mentor teachers on how to train and coach new teachers.
I'm having like aha moment because my very first coaching experience was through Dr. Kelly Gunn, who she was on season 1.
Excellent.
But she was over the first round or I guess version of this residency program.
Yeah.
And she came to me and said, I think you'd be a great mentor teacher. So I'm having this look at us.
Yes.
Okay. So we have to, before we get into like coaching through layers, I think that people would love to hear just like, what was I like as a coach? And you can tell the truth.
Yeah.
Because, I was assistant principal. I was still early in like my leadership when you came.
I didn't know that.
Because Charles did not like me, y'all. He did not like me, not one bit. I had to. But that's okay, because that happens with coaches. You probably have people right now who do not like you one bit.
Look, and the work gonna get done regardless.
You see what
I see it.
Okay,
I see it. I got you.
You see it now.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was I like as a coach?
Yeah, I mean, Kottman was about her business. I mean, let's say that. And I had come from college, and so I still had like my college stank on me, if you will, right?
That's true.
Like true, right? Like straight out. So I had that, and this is my first professional job, like full-time, salaried, etc. And it was some things I needed to unlearn, like, and there's, and learn difference between being a intern, for a while. I spent time as an intern for many years in college versus being a full-time everyday professional. So it was that for me. And you pushing me to get out of that space of like, you got to show up every day, not just on certain days or when you want to. I think also, Kottman would leverage my kids. Talk about coaching through layers. Would leverage my kids in order to get what she wanted. Can I tell the story?
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell the story quickly. So I remembered an old school KIPP where our teachers were super strict and had super high expectations with not a lot of fooling around. Like we did the chants and all the things early 2000s at KIPP, but they didn't play.
Yeah.
And I had that mindset coming back as a teacher at KIPP. And as a result, I was mean. I was like almost drill sergeant, if you will.
He was not playing.
Because I had high expectations.
Yeah.
And my kids know that when you come into Mr. King's class, UGA homeroom, we don't play.
Yep.
And she said I didn't smile at the kids. I don't believe it. I kind of believe it, actually. I didn't smile at the kids. We were cool. And I would always tell them, like, I'm friendly, but I'm not your friend. Anyway, I guess kids are going home reporting me to Cotman and to parents. And so Cotman told me, like, actually she didn't tell me. She came into my homeroom or to all of my homerooms and told the kids, if he doesn't smile at you, come let me know.
I don't even remember that.
The day before, in preparation for that day, before she talked to the kids, either the day before or the morning of, she printed out smiley faces and posted them all around my room, which prompted her to then go into the classroom and tell the kids, like, hey, these smiley faces are to remind him to smile at you. And if he doesn't, come let me know. And so I'm like forcing smiles all day long. And I think 10 years later, clearly I realized that relationships are everything.
Yeah.
Kids won't learn from people they don't like. Coaches won't learn from people they don't trust. Yeah. Adults or kids, right? And so that those interpersonal skills are important. Relationships are important. They really drive everything else.
And I think the other thing for me too was I knew this early on, if you couldn't find the joy in teaching, you were going to burn out.
It's true.
And it was too early for you to be so tense. And I was like, you've got the teaching magic. If you'll just let go a little bit, it's going to flow the way that you need it to flow. Instead, you were having battles every day. And I was like, if you would just smile and relax a little bit and find the humor and the joy in these kids, you'll be able to stay in this work longer. So that was also some of it. But yes, that is our funny story. Because I know at the time he was like wanting to drag me up and down the hallways.
You can have this. Okay. Granted, I had no other job lined up. But I was adamant on you can have this.
Yeah. So all that said, we go back a long way. And so even having you here now, I'm just like, oh, look at Charlie. He's earlier before we got on camera. He said, you're like my mother in education. It's true. It's funny because that's literally how we've kind of found our way together. Okay, so now that we've got through all that stuff, coaching through layers. So you said, like, in your role, you're really over new teacher development. That's like such a big thing. And I think, KIPP is unique in some ways because a lot of places don't have that, right? They don't have their own almost in-house
development program.
Program. And so what is the goal, right? Like of the program? What do you see as the goal?
Yeah. I believe the goal of our program really is to recruit new talent and then coach them up and then have them stay in our region. Yeah. Right? I think in a time where we're losing a ton of educators, some of our greatest ones due to salary, happiness, lack of development, etc. We're unique in that we are, recruiting and then telling them like, hey, if you stick with us, like we have a plan to coach you and grow you.
And there's a proactive piece
and it's proactive
to it.
Immediately, right? It's immediately like they get that development immediately. And then we show them that like many of our former residents who spent 2 years with us in our program and they continued on with us are now leaders and top teachers. Or teachers of the year for the region or for the state. And so there's a
trajectory there. Yeah, and I think it's important too, right? Because I even think about, us being at WAYS for so long, we would have new teachers come in and we would always be like, I don't know, right? Because we're like, it's just different. Yeah. And people always wanted to come there, but they couldn't always, people think that level of support, they want it until sometimes they get it. And they're like, oh, whoa, that's too much support. I don't like these because the expectations of the teachers are just as high. So even the idea of from the very beginning, we're
Make it
going
very
to
clear.
teach you, right?
Mhm.
Like this is how we do things here, and this is what our expectation is for teachers. Okay, so you guys have mentor teachers who are their job is to support the residents, right?
Yeah.
So think like if you've ever had a student teacher.
Yep.
Okay. So what is that like? Because for most of your mentors, it's probably their first, or at least early in the idea of coaching.
Yeah.
That's how I first started coaching. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing with that? Common challenges, benefits. How are you navigating that? What's that like for you?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is when I first started in this role a year and a half ago. I was under the belief that because I knew what strong teachers and what I knew what strong teaching looked like, if I just communicated what it looked like to my mentor teachers,
all will be well.
Across 11 schools, it'll be fine. Right? And then I started to get into the rut, why aren't they getting it?
Yeah.
Right? And I realized that it takes a lot more structure and framing. And in order to get them to believe my why, and then also like align their why with mine.
Okay.
Around this work and this program. And so that was, I think, my first challenge was I have this idea, but I wasn't clear on how to communicate it with the folks that I was directly coaching.
Okay.
And as a result, they had a sense of what this program did, but it wasn't directly correlating with what they were doing day to day with their residents.
And
right?
what their role is in that.
And what their role is in developing those residents, right? What else do I notice? Kind of challenges. I work with 35 plus adults across 11 schools who all have their own individual schedules. So like things like getting in front of them, right? Like the smallest things are hard.
And I would think even how are you managing like, okay, so yes, there's like maybe like a regional culture, but then each school has its own culture. And then you also have the dynamics of like teacher personality to resident personality. Because in the process, you're fitting people together that you think will be good fits.
Right.
But
I have no idea really.
Yeah, what has that been like?
Yeah, actually, I think we've gotten lucky these last 2 years. Like we've had really strong pairings for the most part. But what I've learned to do early on is in that first training of the year in July, before RAs even meet their residents, we have a coaching training session for a day in the summer. And the first session is on relationship building, right? And helping them to understand that it's great that you can be a strong teacher. And yes, that is a prerequisite to be a RA, a resident advisor, or a mentor teacher. But the key part of this work is being able to relate what you know as a veteran teacher to someone who has no idea where to start, right? And again, like I said earlier, people don't learn from people they don't know or don't like, right? And so before you try to teach anybody anything, something as simple as, how's the day going? What do you need? What can I help with? Is going to help disarm someone a lot more than getting straight to the work. Granted, I'm all about the work and the work is important. And so is the relationship, right? And I think that once I'll say our strongest RA pairings, RA resident pairings, are the ones that really invest in that person and say like, all right, they can come with me out after school, or we talk on the weekends, or, we always talk throughout the day versus we only talk at our, set time once a week, 30 minutes, 45 minutes a week.
So we talked a little bit about the challenges you've faced. What are some of the common challenges of new coaches?
Not knowing how to coach. Believing that coaching is only being an observer.
Say more about that.
And a debriefer, right? And so I think that one of the things I started to notice after I would host my trainings and then go out into the schools to see their coaching in action, and then, give them opportunities to talk about it. Like I would debrief with them. What I would hear them say is, oh yeah, I check in with my resident all the time, or I check in at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, right? And what I'm training them on is to set aside specific time for formal coaching where you get an opportunity to introduce a skill, model a skill, and then have that resident practice that skill and then integrate that skill into the resident's practice immediately, right? And they were missing that piece, and that is the coaching, right? Asking,
Listen, I
what
tell
did you?
time.
Yeah,
Observing is not coaching.
it's not.
Oh, I was in their classroom. That's not coaching.
It's not. And providing feedback isn't coaching.
No, you're right.
It's not the only part of coaching. I'd say it is a part.
It's one lever.
It's a piece.
Yep.
But the actual coaching is when they get an opportunity to see
The model,
this skill,
yep,
right?
and
model.
practice and
You
implement.
give them specific steps or
Yep.
the CFS,
Yep.
right? All the
Come on, get
things.
into it.
Yeah, I love it, right? And then they get an opportunity to practice. I think the most important part of that formal
Is
coaching
the
conversation is the
practice.
practice.
I say all the time, if you're going to cut something, do not cut the practice.
No.
I said, now, would LeBron James just sit there and tell somebody, yeah, you're just going to shoot the ball, you got to dribble it 3 times and then shoot it.
And then leave.
And then walk away.
Right.
He's going to be like, no, get the ball.
Right.
Right.
Let's start.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that was the biggest challenge that I saw was like our resident advisors needed that framework and then needed to figure out immediately, how do I fit these 30 or 45 minutes into my schedule? And I say at least one time, but the reality is you're doing this pretty much all day, every day with a new teacher.
I say for a brand new teacher.
Yeah, because they see so much in a day and they need language to what they're seeing.
Huh, that's good.
And our mentor teachers, our resident advisors are the people to provide that.
Yeah, I could see almost like how overwhelming that could be for a brand new teacher, especially when you're in like a excellent teacher's classroom. You're seeing so much and you're trying to download what you saw.
Yep.
Do I do that? Should I be doing that?
Yeah.
Why can't I do that?
Yep.
You know, like, and so they do, you're right, need that language and the almost like background knowledge to understand why you made the instructional choice that you made.
Yeah.
That's really good.
I'll also add one last point to this. I'll add is that I don't want my residents imitating what my coaches are doing, what their lead teachers are doing, right? Because just because I have 10 years of experience, I can do this a certain way, doesn't mean that's going to work for you. So I, as a coach, what I can do is provide you with specific steps that I know is going to work and then allow you to put your own flair on it.
So what does it look like? Because I think this is an interesting point as a coach to not put, I like to say all the time, like we all have like, to me, like teacher bias, certain ways we like things done because that's how I would have done it in my classroom, right? And so how do you, I guess, either coach your mentors to help the new teachers to like find their voice or like their teacher swag?
That's good.
Because technically, right, as a resident advisor, I might be like, these are still my kids in my classroom, right?
And the data is still assigned to me.
Right, right. So I love that you want to find your teacher flair, but right. So how do you, I guess, either like, I don't know if it's coach or like support your resident advisors through like they've got to find their own teacher. I
think that this is where we are now at this point in the year. It's encouraging our resident advisors to lead less and support more. So in the classroom, like take a step back and push your resident forward. Like we're in February. Residents should be teaching almost full lessons every day, every other day, pretty soon.
Because they've got to get ready to be
Because they got to be ready to be a lead teacher next year. Right? And so through that, it's your resident needs as many at-bats as they can get. And through those at-bats is where they're finding their teacher voice. You can give them the formula for a certain skill, introducing a lesson, framing a lesson, closing a lesson, a model or a think aloud, right? You can give them step 1, do this, step 2, do this, but then allow them to find how they want to weave those steps together in order to do it in a way that's comfortable for them as a new teacher. And I think that that's a struggle because we are, as veterans, so clear on what it looks like for us and what it doesn't look like. And turning your classroom over to someone else who is learning.
It's hard,
It's hard.
Do you have any residents who sometimes find like, yeah, you know what, coaching ain't for me. Like I thought I would maybe like that, but I'm okay.
I haven't found that person yet.
Okay, well that's good.
I haven't found them yet.
Because we talk about a lot in episodes just the idea of like the transition from coaching, like working with kids to coaching adults.
No, the tension is there. Yeah, but usually they understand that it's because I want to be a leader. Somewhere down the line in my trajectory. But the tension of I know what I'm doing in my classroom to communicating what I do in my classroom.
It's very different.
It's very different. And a lot of time, I think the biggest thing that a coach needs is an opportunity to reflect on their practices.
So how do you walk people through that? How do you coach your coaches through reflection?
Yeah, I mean, it's giving them time to really brainstorm, right? So I was talking about, coaches, a part of our framework needs to need to be able to think through, if I want to coach someone on how to do a think aloud, what are the steps that I take to do that think aloud? And we're going to take 10 minutes for you to brainstorm, individually and with a partner, right, before we come back together. And then I show them, do a show call, right? Here's what I came up with. You tell me where yours align and where, you might add more things or subtract some things that, that I have. But it's getting them into the habit, into the practice of think about what you do often, because that's what needs to be communicated. It's not just your resident watching you do it and then you expecting them to do it. You need to communicate something to them. And so think about your steps, right? And the ones that work well. And like we select our RAs pretty strategically. I know what I'm looking for. And so it helps. Like I know what their classroom looks like, but now I'm looking for, can you translate that?
Yeah, it's a translation piece. I love that. Think about what you do often. I always say like leaders need to have some sort of practice of reflection, whether that's journaling, whether that's on your drive home each day, whether like you have to have something where you brain dump for yourself. How did I show up today? What went well today? What did not? What adjustment am I making for tomorrow? And I think like a leader and a coach who does not reflect really ends up having a lot of blind spots to their leadership or to their coaching.
I agree.
Because they're not, and then you can't have reflection be such a piece of coaching and you don't engage in it yourself, right? So it's a lot of walking the walk, I think, when it comes to being a coach and having to impart something upon others if you don't do that yourself. So I love the idea of think about what you do often. Especially in schools, because it can be so go. That if you're not intentional about that, it's a huge misstep. So let's talk about coaching through layers, because while you're not a principal, you are coaching through layers because you're coaching. You have your set goals, right? You've been tasked with, hey,
85% need to be hired.
Right. Excellent. But you're not going in directly and coaching the resident, right? And so similarly, right, you have principals who are like, hey, right, like I'm working with the coach, instructional coach, AP, whomever, to work with this person. And really, the principal shouldn't be jumping across the ship, right? That's what happens sometimes, which you shouldn't be doing. So, how are you coaching through layers? Like, what's challenging about that, and what are you learning about that process?
I mean, what I'm doing is consistent training. So we hold at least 3 trainings a year. We bring all of our resident advisors together, or mentor teachers together, and I'm just constantly stamping the framework, right? And I know that a day in the life of a school teacher is ridiculous and it is ever changing, right? The schedule, field trips, teammate out, got to fill in, etc. Right? And also I'm stamping that this is what it takes in order to reach our end result. So I guess for me, it's also communicating what our goal is.
I also hear consistency in there.
Consistency, definitely.
So I hear like, it's going to be hard to coach through layers if the bar is constantly changing. Right? Like if you can't coach through layers and it be where you have a little bit less of hands on something. If every other week, or hey, new quarter, we have a brand new focus, right? If the goalpost is moving, it's going to be really hard to coach through those layers.
And I try to keep it simple. Like my folks know at this point that we got a 3 3-section process. Name it till you do it. Name the skill, model the skill, have the resident do the skill. That is your 15-minute coaching meeting, as often as you can, right? And so they know and they hear me say it all the time. So after I communicate, what our goal is, our why for it, share that framework with them and stamp it every time that we meet, I'm going into the buildings and watching them execute it.
So your presence also,
Presence is important,
so even if you're coaching through layers, your presence still has to be felt whether that's in that classroom
Yep.
or in that building or that department,
Yep.
trying to make the connection across, sectors. And so
Yeah.
your presence
Yeah.
has to be a part of it as well.
I almost feel like like my role is like a blended parent or a parent of within a blended family, because like I don't belong to one particular campus,
Yeah.
and also I have to be consistently showing up to that campus in order for them to feel that the program is alive and well. And
That's
that it's
so
happening
true.
day to
That's
day,
so true, 'cause
though I'm not there every day.
Yeah, because it's so funny because you'll be in situations where people are like, "Oh, I didn't," and I feel like that's come similar to being a consultant. I haven't seen you. I'm like,
Doesn't mean the work isn't
I'm
happening.
here.
What should be
I
happening?
was at the other school. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But like, I'm present.
Yep.
But if someone in the school feels like they went 2 weeks without seeing you, you know what I mean? And it's like, but I'm only here one day a week, right? Then suddenly it's like there's definitely could be some out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
So I hear definitely like when you're coaching through layers, there is a piece about presence,
Right.
that's important to keep that momentum going, if that makes sense.
And I empower both sides of this, right? So my residents and also my resident advisors to be accountable and to hold each other accountable. Like that's the only way that you're going to grow. Advocate for what you need. So if it's my RAs, call me if you need anything, if you're experiencing anything. I don't mind calling a school leader and saying, hey, so-and-so needs this, so-and-so needs this time every day or every week consistently, right? And I will have that conversation if you need it. Or I also empower my residents, hey, if you're not getting coached every week, you need to let somebody know, right? Because you're not just there just to be observing or sitting around. You're not an assistant teacher, right? You should be learning every day. This is your learning year, and you should be engaged in it daily. So there's an accountability factor that has to be there when you're coaching through layers. Because if the individuals in the layers don't feel a sense of accountability, then there can be a ball drop there too. And it's so easy for the ball to drop and the coaching get lost, and we just get into the regular rut of school every day, right? And the reality is our residents don't grow, which means that we've recruited new talent to the region, but we're not feeding a pipeline of strong leaders, strong teachers, strong leaders, right? And I always tell them that I want them to be leaders leading this work, leading our region within 5 to 10 years. I got to go. Okay. You got to retire. 2046 is the year I'm supposed to be retired. Okay. I don't have a long time. I'm telling you, that's not you know in a year. Yeah. Man. Okay, so let me ask this. What have you learned as a coach through this experience, right? Because you've coached in different ways, but this is a very different way to coach. What have you learned? I think two things come to mind. The first one is that less is more. I think that because we try and do a lot. We try and do too much. And my first year, I was trying to do it all. Yeah. And the reality is, it's one of me that's showing up for my resident advisors day in and day out when it comes to providing their support, right? And so I'd had to figure out what were the key things that they needed to know in order to do this job well. Versus like the nice to haves. Versus the nice to haves, right? And needed to create a coaching framework from those key things. That was it. And they needed to know that they had me as a partner in the work. Yeah. That was it. What am I learning? I think the second thing is, I don't know what the second thing was. It's okay though. It'll come. It will. It will. But the key thing was that less is more. Yeah. Right? Like I needed to figure out. But I think that's powerful because in schools, everything feels like a fire right now thing sometimes. Yeah. And you can't tackle all of it well. Yeah. So being able to pare down and say, this is the lever. This is the thing that we're going to focus on that's going to make a difference. And if we can get that consistent, then I can layer on this next thing. So I think the less is more is just a valuable lesson because we're constantly trying to do so much wholeheartedly from a good place. Yeah. But that's also how you burn people out. Right. It's how you don't feel like you're winning in any area, right? And they needed it up front. Like, there's no need for me to give you your coaching framework in September after 2 months has passed. I'm going to give it to you in July. Yeah. And then I'm going to revisit it in September now that you've had a month or a month and a half with your resident. Yeah. And then let's talk about what you're experiencing, what's working, what's not working, what do you still need, and then I'll give you some resources in order to better support your resident.
What brings you the most joy of coaching?
I still love being in the school, being in classrooms, and in a way, I'm still teaching and leading. And I think that that's the part that I love about this role, is that I get to show up still. I still get to dress up. I always pull that first day picture where I'm in a suit and some fake glasses, holding up a composition notebook, teaching the kids how to use it. Probably didn't use it at all. But I still get to do the work of teaching and leading. I still get to see and interact with scholars. I still get to see and interact with school leaders, principals, and with teachers every day. When I tell you that, like, I'm walking alongside them, I don't mind, supporting, hopping in and being a co-teacher, a sub, etc. So I think that excites me the most about this work. And then I'll also add, I know that our program is working when our residents are showing it in their conversations with students, in their opportunities to lead when they are advanced or far beyond where they should be in the year. That's when I know that, okay, you got a good coach, and that coach is communicating exactly what they should be. Shout out to y'all, right? That makes me feel good, because it means that, like, all right, somebody heard me and it's clicking.
The light bulb.
And they're working it.
The light bulb.
Yeah, it's going off. And we have phenomenal new teachers in the region that's been in education for 2 years, but are already showing results and progress in data. When I talk about progress, I mean like and results. I talk about the students are growing as a result of what the teachers are doing. And that makes me feel good.
I love that.
Thanks.
So you also do some like consulting.
I do.
Talk to us about that. What's that like?
It's another opportunity for me to stay close to the work of supporting students, whether it's in summer camps or districts, regional districts, etc. And so oftentimes I'm supporting leaders and their organizations around culture, restorative practices, around including DEI initiatives into their leadership plans, being equity focused, being mission driven as organizations, and doing this work of like how to coach and develop and support new teachers. I think that's something new I'm adding on, but it's the work that is transferable across so many different organizations, not just education, not just schools.
And necessary, right? Because at the end of the day, it costs money to find, train, retain,
and lose. It costs to lose them too.
Right. And we know statistically what it means for kids to have teachers who've been in the classroom 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. When we lose that, it's, like
the org feels it.
Because you don't have those model examples. I say all the time when people are like, oh, you were such a great teacher. I'm like, honestly, my very first year, I didn't struggle because I had no choice. Only because I worked on a team with phenomenal teachers. So I didn't know what I was doing. But I had exemplars down the hall, and I just copied everything they did because I had no clue, right? But when you don't have like those exemplars in your building, it's really hard because you've got to have like that culture of what's the bar of teaching? What does teaching look like in this building? And when you don't have that, it's a huge gap to fill.
It's a guessing game, right? And I believe it allows folks to just show up and do whatever. And I think that's a pet peeve of mine, right?
Don't be doing whatever.
Don't do whatever. Our kids don't deserve that.
I feel like you got
They can't afford it. I'm sure I did. I'm sure I did. I used to just show up some days. They were like, don't do that, friend. Get it together, okay? Yeah.
I used to have Charles sometimes working in my office. Remember that?
Forced planning, okay, during the day.
Like, during your planning period, the report, we ain't got to talk. You don't got to talk to me. And he would fight it, but then there would be some days I would just happen to come back to my office, who would be in there working.
I'm in there working, okay.
Right. And so sometimes I always laugh at part of coaching, and I think you're probably getting some of this now as you're getting residents who are fresh out. It really is sometimes for your baby teachers, it's like coaching life skills.
It really is.
Like,
it really is.
Baby, you got to set an alarm.
Get a planner.
Please.
Yeah. And don't start working the planner on the first day of school.
Listen, or maybe you should stay at your mama's house for a little bit longer. Save your money. You're not ready yet.
You said that. You did, and I did.
But that's so much. And that's the part for me of coaching new teachers that I really love is when I get to see them like turn into like adults too.
Yeah.
I'm like, look at my baby. Like, not only are you a good teacher, but you're a functioning adult.
Yeah, I finally figured it out, mostly.
But like that piece, because I always say, like, I didn't start teaching at 23. And I'm like, I can't imagine the type of person I was at 23 and like hanging out and doing things and having fun.
Yeah.
I can imagine I have to go to a cubicle.
Yeah.
I can't imagine at 7 a.m. being in front of 30 children and then
being asked to be somewhere at 7 a.m. when you're 21 is just wow. Let's just start there, okay? I struggled, okay?
It was a lot. I have more grace now.
Okay.
It was a lot. And so I just think that like your role is just so unique because you're teaching people how to be teachers, but you're also teaching people how to like adult and be good citizens and like responsibility and a lot of things that they think they've got it made. You know what I mean? And so it's just there's a larger responsibility that comes with coaching new teachers beyond just let me teach you these strategies. And so I appreciate the work that you're doing in that way.
We're still learning and growing. Like even me 10 years into this professional career, I'm still learning and growing, right? And I don't know what I don't know until I get in front of people who know what they're doing and who has a plan and is working their plan. I think one thing that I appreciated about my experience with you guys at Ways is that I was the youngest in the building for a while. And so everyone else was like veterans. And like you said, with your experience was doing what they do and doing it well, y'all. Like results on top of results. And so I had no choice, one, but to be great, but two, I also had strong models. And I was able to go down the hall or see, or talk with someone and say like, all right, I'm still that.
I'm gonna try that.
I'm gonna try that tomorrow. Didn't work. I'm gonna go to somebody else to see what worked and what like. And that was both for work and for life. Yeah, baby. Working with somebody at 21.
It's not for the faint of heart. Okay, so my last question. How are you developing yourself right now?
I think I am still engaging in community development programs. Okay. I'm looking to apply for kind of more this year. I used to be the person in high school or college like to apply to all the leadership positions and things. And then when I started working, I was like, all right, let me focus on this job. Right. But I think I'm getting back to that point of realizing that I still need that professional development. And so when I get opportunities to go to a conference and learn, I get to one, soak in the information, look for the key points, but also like critique the conference. Like, I didn't like how so and so.
I like how that was.
Right. Yeah. And that's always fun because I know what it should look like to teach or coach. But conferences and then like looking for opportunities regionally or within the United States to look for other opportunities to grow, in coaching. What's the landscape, knowledge around what's the landscape that we're operating in right now, what's coming, what should I be preparing for, given where we are in the world right now, and the attack against education and educators, and the need, for strong education systems. New education systems. I am all for
innovation,
burning it down and starting over. Because our Black and brown kids are, operating within a system that was not built for them. And so, and expected to thrive. So I'm growing and finding those opportunities wherever I can. I
love that. I really appreciate you coming on the episode.
Thanks for having me. Feel we always have our full circle moments, but this is like the one, okay? This is the one. This is like, I get to sit in her office again, okay?
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Oh. Okay, before I get all teary-eyed and misty-eyed on the YouTube, thank you for coming on the episode. New teachers are my favorite, and so I'm just excited for the work that you're doing and the impact that you're going to have long-term as you create this like beautiful pipeline of really strong, passionate, well-versed educators. So thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for joining us. Make sure that you like, subscribe, follow us on Instagram. Oh, how can they keep up with you? Like if you're working all that you're doing.
I Speak King, 2 Ks. Follow me on Instagram. I Speak King, 2 Ks in there.
Wonderful. And we'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much.